Do you think that we've seen though the impacts of those? You know, because this is all incredibly new, right? So do you think that
Absolutely.
we've seen what will be the impacts of these things? Yeah, or do you think that they're kind of unforeseen? What this is going to do to us as we grow up, particularly my generation who have only ever
Yeah.
known this way. Um, do you think we really
Yeah.
know the impacts that's going to have on people as they sort of grow older?
The problem is that the data is very difficult to get because it's one of those sort of circular arguments where you don't know whether anxiety is increasing or whether you're just actually asking about anxiety more.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things. I think anxiety, I mean, for me, anxiety, depression, these things, they are part of being human and they've always been there. They are part of, we don't want people to feel them and we want to reduce them as much as possible. But my guess is that they've always kind of been there. So it's one of those things that's actually difficult. When you go looking for it, you may find it. You know, in the past, rates were much, much lower, but that was because people weren't coming forward and saying, I struggle with this. You know, we have a whole cultural thing that would say, you know, stiff upper lip. You don't say you feel afraid. You don't say you feel anxiety. You just get on with it. So the data is actually difficult to come by. Comparing data would be difficult, but my guess is that we probably are already seeing it for a number of reasons as well. I mean, I think the pressure, not just this kind of thing, but I think the pressure that seems to be on children. I think this is probably in terms of education. This is probably a sort of function of league tables, and this way it's done it is that the pressure to succeed, the pressure for exams, is unrelenting. I mean, it's absolutely unrelenting, really. They're starting younger and younger. And from the age of 5 until the age of 21, you know, children are being appraised. They're worried about constantly their exams, where they come, whether it's, you know, their SATs, their 11 plus, their GCSEs, their A levels, then the degree, and then they have to start living and go out to work. And I just think sometimes it's all too much. You know, the expectation has just built and built and built and built. And I do think it is a kind of watershed time to kind of stop, take a look back and think, what are we doing? You know, is this what for? You know, what are these people working for? What are you driving towards? You know, the capitalistic myth of kind of you know, you get your big house, you get your car, and then you're happy. Everybody's learning that it's bullshit. You know, that actually you get to that stage and that does not guarantee happiness. That does not guarantee contentedness. So we need to sort of, I mean, you know, to my view, that needs to be completely rethought,
Yeah,
which is a big,
it is right. It's yeah,
big ask.
which is probably why so many people are avoiding having the conversations. We spoke about this again last week when we're talking about political
Mm,
education and media literacy, the importance
mm,
of this stuff. It's like it kind of you sit down and discuss it, and it boggles my mind that we're not teaching
mm.
young people how to navigate, how to
Yeah,
properly navigate in the world. But
absolutely.
the repercussions of educating young people about this is that maybe people more and more, which they are already, will sit up and go, "Hang on a minute, this is all shit. We need to
Yeah,
change it as soon
yeah,
as we possibly can." And that
yeah,
then, first of all, it's going to hit a lot of companies' profit margins, like we said, but also it's going to take
absolutely.
huge societal change. And there are many people that A, society suits in the way that it's formulated at the moment, but
Yeah,
B, probably don't want to partake in that
yeah.
massive change. So do you think that's why we're not educating young people on these issues, or are there other reasons?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I think that's a very, very good question because I'm exactly the same as you. It sort of it really puzzles me that actually so much is prioritized over basic, as you say, understanding, self-understanding, emotional understanding, relational understanding, self-worth, our place in the world, values, all those kind of things. I think they are coming in. I mean, I think they are. I do hear about it, but whether people, but at the same time, there is still this enormous pressure on qualifications, on achievements, those kind of things. So honestly, I honest answer is I don't know. I don't know why this isn't actually a sort of um, not a taught part of the curriculum. Maybe government with the national curriculum is not seen as it's part of its remit. Maybe it sees that as parental, as a parental remit. But I think the problem is that those parents have never been taught it either. So
Yeah.
how are they supposed to pass it on to their children? You know, the education's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's got to start by, it's got to be given by educated people. I could never hope to teach my kids GCSE maths. I would. I was that hopeless. I want to give it to somebody who knows about that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I don't think parents can be given that responsibility
No.
left on their shoulders. No.
Surely that's the point of the education system, isn't it? It's to
Well, I
have
would think
people
so.
who are qualified teaching people
Yeah.
qualifications.
Yeah.
I would have thought that and fundamentally the things that you need to to learn to function in society, which again,
Mm.
more things under this bracket is like sort of taxes, mortgages,
Hmm. Yeah.
how to do your accounts, that sort of stuff. We still don't teach those
Absolutely.
things. You need to know those things in order to live
Yeah.
properly. Why aren't we
Yeah.
teaching them? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand it. And when we,
No.
we
No.
look at social media and social media's influence to young people,
Yeah.
they are impacting, these things are impacting young people in such profound ways.
Mm.
Completely altering their perceptions of themselves. Particularly something that really worries me, and that a trap that I think I've fallen into a lot is the comparison to
Oh God.
people.
Yeah.
Comparing myself to somebody who's like 32 years old, who's running their
Yeah.
own business, as somebody who's
Yeah.
in the process, or is trying to run a business, who's
Yeah.
really really successful, and I'm 22, looking at that person
Mm.
going, why am I not like that? It's just
Yeah.
completely unrealistic, completely ridiculous thing to do, but it's
Yeah.
part of using those, you know, those sites, is that this person is somebody who is putting on a face. It's a
Uh-huh.
mask. It's not
Hmm.
truly what their life is like. Yet we're sat here, or I'm sat here in my room comparing myself to
Yeah.
that person. It's really dangerous,
Hmm.
and we're not teaching, first of all, young people why that's not a good idea to do,
Mm.
but also what the impacts of that is. Why we shouldn't do it. It just it really seems.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, comparison is one of those things it's completely useless. It's neither good for the sender or nor the
Mm,
receiver. It's kind of, as you say, when it's one of those things that if we get sort of if we compare ourselves to somebody we're found wanting, we're left feeling bad. But also the person who's putting their image up on Instagram with all the filters and stuff and feeling, oh, look at me, this is good, and that's a total false self. They're not getting a proper sense of themselves. They're feeling what's superior to other people. They're
mm,
feeling that they're getting their sense of self-worth by having a comparison to other people, and that's really dangerous. I mean, that will crack at some point.
mm,
I think there is this strange thing going on that I read about sometimes, about how people will put themselves out there on Instagram or these kind of things, and are then very surprised when people are cruel and mean. And it's kind of like, but that's what people are like. And actually, if you kind of, and I know it's one of these things that people say they shouldn't be given free rein, but actually, if you went to a park and stood on the corner, sort of saying, "Hey, everybody, look at me," someone's bound to call me a dickhead. Now I can't get upset then about that person calling me a dickhead. I've got to expect that, because that's people. We can't police everybody's behavior. But I think that's the worry, is that I think people put out the Instagram things to get a sense of their self-worth from it, and that's what worries me, because they're not going to get it, not from anonymous people, not from a crowd. Essentially you're dealing with a crowd in a pub. I mean, it's like, I used to I used to be a musician. It's kind of, I never got on stage expecting everybody to cheer and clap. When somebody would shout, "You're shit," you just have to deal with it.
yeah.
It's kind of, so yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I know how upsetting these things can be, but actually, I think the whole system of putting yourself out there is problematic. I
But
really do.
that's the thing, when you say it like that, it's so obvious, right? When you say, if you were
Mm.
to stand in a pub and go, I want everybody to tell me what they think of me, you're going to get a lot of those people saying, you're an idiot, or
Yeah,
worse.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
shouldn't be surprised when we put that stuff on social media and people do that, because social media doesn't make people bad. It's just highlighting what those people are really like.
absolutely,
But we're
yeah.
not told
And
that, right? We're said everybody, we all have to be nice, and everyone's going to be kind to each other, and we're going to be really supportive. And when that's not the case, we're surprised.
well, and the thing about it is that, if we were to really dig down into those people who are saying you look like a dickhead or whatever, the reason they're saying that is probably because they feel bad about themselves. So to say you look like a dickhead, or you look like, fat and ugly, whatever, they're making themselves, they're putting themselves in a hierarchical way above you. They're kind of like, right, I put them down. So they're feeling better about themselves. Everybody's struggling to feel better about themselves in their own way. So we can't really, and the one to say, yes, okay, that's not a particularly great way, but not everybody has the self-awareness to understand that, or to understand, or have the empathy to understand what it does to everybody else when you say these things. So, I think we have to kind of encompass, like you say, encompass the understanding, and maybe feel that something about the internet, the Instagram, is structurally unsound. As you say, it's the equivalent of standing up in front of a crowd of people and saying, "What do you think of me?"
Yeah.
And say that actually structurally in that, there's no right answers. There's
Yeah.
no, yeah.
Do you think that social media companies themselves have any kind of responsibility to alter their platforms to combat against this stuff? Because this is something that I struggle with. Because on the one hand,
Mm,
I think that as if you're trying to create a product that is as good as it possibly can be, you want to try
yeah.
your best to mitigate against those issues. A,
Mm,
I don't really know if they can be mitigated against. I think they're just a byproduct of these platforms,
mm,
and a lot of these platforms are now being used in ways that they weren't intended to be used. So Twitter, for example, was supposed to be a networking site like LinkedIn. Now
mm,
it isn't. It's just toilet walls, and people just write their thoughts on there and
mm,
throw them off into the world. So I don't know if
yeah.
those sites can be altered in a way that's really productive. But also, is the onus on them? Do you think to kind of change these platforms in order for them to be productive, or do we just need to, like you say, educate people to show them that this is the reality of these platforms? You need to be careful and use them in the right way.
That's a very good question. I really don't know. I fall down on both sides, really.
Mm,
On one hand, I kind of think, if you're a company that's making money out of these things, I think you do need to be held responsible for your product. And, I suppose you could look at it as, I suppose the issue is whether you could, the thing that goes to my mind about this stuff, the comparison I always come up with, is cigarette smoking. That the defense for cigarette companies, tobacco companies, was always, we didn't know this was bad for people. And actually, a lot of evidence then came out that said that they
mm,
did know. Now, the same with this stuff. I don't know whether the evidence is quite in yet about whether this stuff is damaging, whether these platforms are damaging. Now, if it does come back and the evidence is that it's damaging and they still don't do stuff, then yes, I think they're culpable and should be made culpable. The problem is that I don't know whether they can take the view that, well, we don't have any evidence, we do our best to protect these, protect users. So I honestly don't know. I think coming down on a safe side, I think better education is absolutely
mm,
key. Because then it becomes a choice. Because you're
yeah.
absolutely right. I think one of the problems is that your generation, any generations coming up, doesn't have a separate understanding of what this is. It's just what you do. It's just life. It's there. I guess in the same way that for my generation and the generation above, television was just something that was there. You never questioned it. These technologies, um, they get accepted, but for my generation, I can still look at Twitter, Instagram askance because I've seen it be created. I know a time before it
Mm,
wasn't there, but for other people, they don't have that, and so they just kind of, they're swimming in the water without really knowing the water's poisoned. And I think that's what we have to educate people to kind of say, look, this is a choice to use this stuff. You don't have to. We have to educate people about what is out there. To like you say, media education, for people to say to people, why am I being shown this? Why is this company choosing to allow this? Why is this company choosing to show me this? Why is this news outlet choosing to tell me this? There are, as you say about Murdoch headlines, these
mm,
kind of things, there are innumerable things happening in the world, new events. Why am I being told this? Why have they chosen this as the thing to put on the front of their newspaper? And I think that kind of education for me is really important and should be in schools.
yeah.
Absolutely. If we're thinking about the health and well-being, future of our future of young people and everybody going forward, this kind of stuff we need to understand.